In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at how we can use the screen designer to make the presentation screen in an Instant Song Presenter look the way you want it to look. With the background that you want to use, the fonts and the colors for all of these lyrics, just to make them look the way you want them to look. We're going to start by going to the Preferences screen. And in this case, we're going to design the default screen. So the default design for what everything's going to start with. And then you can also do the same thing in the playlist for each individual song, because there's also a screen designer button once you go into the settings of a playlist item. But we're going to start here by starting up the screen designer screen, and you'll see that you get a preview of what this would look like with a typical song, and you've got all the individual settings over here, but you've also got preset designs, and we'll see that we're actually using the full screen with title preset right now. There's also a full screen with no title. There's lyrics on the left and lyrics on the right. We can also do the dual language setup here, which allows us to use language 1 and language 2 and set those colors individually. They could be the same color, but you can also change the color individually for each of the items, the title, the body text, which in this case is white, and then language 2, which is yellow. You can see there's also a preset for no title with dual languages, as well as dual languages on left and right, which would come in handy also if you're going to do multiple screens where you'd have actually two different projectors and have English on one side and Spanish on the other. You could use that side-by-side setting. But we're going to go back to the main preset, and then we're going to customize from there. So you'll see over here we can go in and hit the show title. We can turn that off, and we can refresh this preview, and you'll see what it looks like once you've made that change. We'll put the title back in though. We can go and set the font for the title, and I happen to have a font called David, so I will go ahead and try that font. You'll see that we can get a little preview here. In this case it's bold. Let's go ahead and put italic on the title, and we'll go ahead and change the font color. We'll give it a green color. Again, we can preview if we want. We can change the effect. Right now it's on outline. You can do a shadow as well, which will give it a little bit of a drop shadow instead of that outline. You can change that drop shadow color to something other than black if you wanted to. I'm going to leave it black in this case. We can make it a little deeper looking shadow, so you can see it gives a little more offset the more effect size you add to it. You can also change the alignment, whether you want it to align to the very top of the screen or the bottom of this title area, which I'll show you in a minute how we change where that title area is. I'm going to go ahead and put this back to the middle, and of course you can do left, right, or center on that title. Title makes sense to be centered, so we'll leave it centered. Now, one of the new features for the body text in Instant Song Presenter is this option to allow text wrapping or not. You'll see that if we do allow text wrapping and we refresh this preview, you see how in these lines one word comes down. It might break up the phrasing of the song. If you don't like that, you can turn this off, and then you'll see it goes back to each line being stretched out to exactly how it was entered in the song. Now, the downside to that is that some of those songs that have a really long line, it's going to make the font get smaller and smaller if there's no carriage returns in those lines. Now, you can go in and manually to some of those songs that are abnormally long and put carriage returns in them so that they look the way you want. I'm going to go ahead and leave this off for right now. Now you'll see I can also go in here and choose a different font for the body. So we'll change the body font a little bit there. And we can change the color of the body font. In this case, maybe we'll make it blue. I'm sure this is not going to look very pretty, but at least you'll see that you can change the colors of that. Again, changing the effect color, changing whether this is an outline or a shadow. Let's just see how a shadow looks. Maybe if we put a large shadow on it, you can see there you've got a drop shadow. And again, we've got alignment. Maybe we want to align this to the top instead of center. And you, of course, could do left justified or right justified text if you wanted to. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and put it back center, as again this is my default screen design. I can change that for an individual item in a playlist if I want to. Now here you've got the max font and the minimum font. Basically what this is saying is that this 80 points is the maximum I'm going to let fonts get to. So if there's only a few lines or a few words in each line of this particular song, it's not going to make that font any larger than 80 points, but it's also not going to go any smaller than 18 points. If there's so much text that it needs to go smaller than that, then it's going to break it up into multiple screens. But rather than having a set font size, Instant Song Presenter is always trying to make the font as big as it can be, the lyrics as large as they can be on a screen, filling that screen. So these are the ways you can control just how big or how small that font ends up. Now you'll see here, this is also where we would choose to show language 2 or not. So you can see we can put this back in here, and we would need to rearrange how the text lays out if we do that. So what I'm going to do now is hit the Show Panels. And what that's going to do is allow me to arrange the areas where this text information is going to lay out. So you'll see I've got a title area, which I can arrange any way I want by, if you grab anywhere on the panel, you can move it around. And if you grab in the red dot, you can resize this title area. So we'll put the title area back to about right there. And in this case, we're going to take language 1 and we'll give it this amount of space, and we can take language 2, put a little bit of a space in between these two, and then we'll go ahead and stretch this back out. You could make each one of them a little bit different. If you wanted language 1 to be a little bit larger than language 2, you could do that. So if we wanted to make language 2 perhaps a little bit smaller area, we can do that and then stretch this down. So now when we do the refresh preview, you'll see that you've got language 1, which is a slightly larger font, and language 2 a little smaller, and down into this area. So that is the main way of setting up the fonts and the coloring of the fonts and making this look how you want it to look as the default screen design. Oh, one thing I didn't mention is that actually the background here is just a simply you can click on this and it'll open up the backgrounds folder on your computer, the default backgrounds folder, and you can choose a different background here. Let's refresh the preview now, and you'll see that really is fairly ugly. I wouldn't usually use the green back there, but you can see that's where you'd change the default background as well. And then we can just save this. Now this is going to be my default in the preferences, so that when I do any song here, click on it, that's the way it's going to look now. Of course, right now there's only language 1 in Instant Song Presenter. You can go in and put in language 2, so that's why we're not really seeing anything else other than language 1 here. You'd have to add language 2 to an individual item. There is certainly a hope that we will be able to add a second language, most likely Spanish, into the Instant Song Presenter database. Right now you only have language 1, and you need to go in and add the second language to that. So that's been using the Screen Designer to design the screen to make it look the way you want it to look.